Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening. We are from Group 5. I am Riyanto Susilo, and my friends Barlian Santosa and Yunita Dwiningtyas. Our topic is about how to read and analyze work of art, novel, and film. Work of art. Art is a highly diverse range of human activities engaged in creating visual, auditory, or performance artifacts, artwork that express the author's imaginative or technical skills and are intended to be appreciated for their beauty or emotional power. Art in general is a thing created by humans, especially art lovers, in which there is a result with an element of beauty. Art is a way of expression, a way of joy, a way of making people understand things which can't be done verbally. In fact, we can say that everything that is beautiful is art. Art is everywhere around us and not just present in the museum and galleries. Art fills the creators as well as the admirer with joy as it provides us with inner calmness and happiness. Work of art is something that is considered to have aesthetic value, something that is beautiful, intriguing, interesting, creative, or extremely well done. Based on dictionary.com, work of art is a piece of creative work in art, especially a painting or sculpture, a product that gives aesthetic pleasure and that can be just separately from any utilitarian consideration. Now, I'll try to explain about read and analysis. Read, based on dictionary.com, the definition of read is to look carefully so as to understand the meaning of something written, printed, etc. To read a book, to read a music, to utter aloud or render in speech something written or printed. Reading a story to his children, the actor reads his lines in a booming voice. Read is to use eyes or fingers to figure out the letters or the symbol means. Type of reading in English. We have some type of reading in English that there are scanning, skimming, extensive reading, intensive reading. Scanning, this reading mode is I'm only at finding the necessary information at the text. Scanning, this reading mode is I'm only at finding the necessary information in the text. For example, scanning at telephone books. We are looking for it quickly. We know what we are searching for, keyword and names. We see every item on the page, but we don't necessarily read the page. We ignore anything you are not looking for. Thus, we discover the keyword being searched for. We will be unable to recall the exact content of the page. Second is about skimming. Skimming, this reading mode is used to get to know and understand if this information is useful to us. The goal is not to search for specific fact, but to evaluate the text for complexity, interest, and a general storyline. The purpose of skimming is to check relevance of text, set the scenes for the more concentrate effort that is to follow if the text is useful. Extensive reading, the purpose of this type of reading is to get acquainted with new information. In this mode, people read art or scientific literature without being distracted by new, unfamiliar words if their meaning can be approximately understood from the context. Intensive reading. Typically, this type of reading is used in the study of English in order to intensively parse the purpose sought teaching text. With this type of reading, grammatical construction, unfamiliar words, and phrases are intensively examined. Nah, jika kembali ke topik kita pada malam hari ini, yaitu bagaimana kita membaca karya sastra dan bagaimana kita menganalisis karya sastra. Membaca sastra itu digolongkan ke dalam membaca estetik, yaitu membaca yang berhubungan dengan seni atau keindahan. Dalam membaca sastra, pembaca dituntut untuk mengaktifkan daya imajinasinya dan kreativitasnya agar dapat memahami dan menghayati isi bacaan. Setelah membaca sebuah karya sastra, pembaca akan memperoleh pengetahuan dan pengalaman melalui karya sastra yang dibacanya. Disinilah letak kelebihan pembaca karya sastra dibandingkan pembaca karya-karya lainnya. Nah, karya sastra itu sendiri digolongkan menjadi 3 jenis. Ada yang namanya prosa, ada yang namanya puisi, dan drama. Nah, prosa yang biasa disebut juga dengan cerita rekaan memiliki fungsi untuk memberitahukan kepada pembaca tentang suatu kejadian atau peristiwa yang mungkin ada dalam kehidupan nyata. Nah, unsur-unsur prosa fiksi itu mencakup seperti tema, tokoh, alur, setting, atau latar belakang, kemudian ada gaya dan sudut pandang. Nah, dalam prosa terkandung sebuah amanat yang dibungkus oleh unsur-unsur cerita tersebut. Kejadian-kejadian dalam amanat inilah yang akan kita peroleh dari cerita yang kita baca sebagai suatu pengalaman. Kemudian puisi. Puisi adalah karya sastra yang kaya akan makna. Ada yang memberi istilah puisi itu adalah padat makna. Sebuah puisi pada dasarnya adalah sebuah cerita yang berisi berbagai peristiwa. Namun, tidak semua peristiwa dalam puisi itu diceritakan. Yang dikemukakan dalam puisi hanyalah inti masalah, peristiwa, atau inti cerita. Oleh karena itu, dalam menciptakan puisi, pengarang banyak melakukan pemadatan. Artinya, bahasa yang digunakan puisi dicari kata-kata yang singkat atau bahkan sengaja disingkat dengan cara mengambil inti dasarnya, seperti menghilangkan imbuhan, menghilangkan pengulangan, dan sebagainya. Drama, jika kita lihat, drama merupakan cerita yang dilakonkan. Artinya, karya sastra jenis drama memiliki isi yang tidak berbeda dengan prosa fiksi. Hanya pada drama, para pelaku atau tokoh yang ada dalam prosa fiksi melakonkan sendiri peristiwanya. Dengan demikian, drama ditulis dalam bentuk naskah, yang di dalamnya ada narasi dan dialog antar tokoh. Analysis. Based on your dictionary.com, the definition of analysis is the process of breaking down something into its part to learn what they do or how they relate to one another. Analysis is the branch of mathematics that deal with inequalities and limit. The present course deals with the most basic concept in analysis. The goals of the course is to acquaint the reader with rigorous proof in analysis and also to set a firm foundation for calculate of one variable. In linguistics, semantic analysis is the process of relating syntactic structure from the level of phrases, clauses, sentences, and paragraphs to the level of the writing as a whole to their language independent meaning. In other words, analysis is a separating or breaking up of any whole into its part. Menganalisa karya sastra adalah cara untuk lebih mengenal karya sastra tersebut. Dengan menganalisa, akan mengetahui makna dari karya sastra tersebut. Sedangkan karya sastra sendiri adalah seni yang diciptakan untuk para pembacanya. Sastra dalam perspektif sosiologi sastra merupakan sebuah cerminan dari realita yang terjadi di masyarakat. Kemampuan sastra sebagai cerminan masyarakat tidak terlepas dari peran pengarang. Pada umumnya, para pengarang yang berhasil adalah para pengamat sosial, sebab merekalah yang mampu untuk mengkombinasikan antara fakta-fakta yang ada dalam masyarakat dengan ciri-ciri fiksional. Sastra dengan demikian merupakan gabungan dari dua elemen, yakni fakta dan fiksi. Keduanya tidak dapat dipisahkan. I think that's all for me. The next explanation will be explained by Miss Yunita. Miss Yunita, time is yours.
Well, I'm Yunita, and I want to tell you about how to read a film. The first step to being a good film reader is to watch with pen and notebook, or writing journal in hand, jotting down notes as you watch the film. This will give you specific things to talk about in our class discussion and when you write your essays. So here are some things to look for when reading, not watching a film. For the first important thing to do when you watch a film is to not merely pay attention to the story, plot and characters, but to how they are presented by the camera. The second is pay attention to how the movie opens and ends. The first thing you see in a movie is the credits. What images are shown in these credits? How is music used to set the mood of the film? The third is editing. Most people do not pay attention to how a film is edited or how it cuts from shot to shot and scene to scene. This too is an important part of how film has an effect on an audience. The next is consider the overall mood of the film as created by acting, music, lighting, sound, effects, costumes, colors, sets, and etc. All of these things taken together is what film scholars call mise-en-scène. These small details is for put before the camera. These small details of which filmmakers often pay great deal of attention to often go unnoticed but play a crucial role in a film. The next is look for repetition that cue you into the things the director or writer thinks are important. Is there a recurring song, music, camera, technique, special effect that adds meaning to the film? Just as when you read a book or play, pay attention to these repetitions. And finally, think about how your observations relate to the overarching ideas, issues, and themes of the film. How do these particulars help your understanding of the whole? The next is we would like to discuss about how to analyze a film. What is film analysis and how does it differ from literary analysis? Analyzing film, like analyzing literature, is a form of rhetorical analysis, critically analyzing and evaluating discourse, including words, phrase, and image. Having a clear argument and supporting evidence is every bit as critical to film analysis as to other forms of academic writing. Unlike literature, film incorporates audiovisual elements and therefore introduces a new dimension to analysis. Ultimately, however, analysis of a film is not too different. Think of all the things that make up scenes in a film. There are the actors, the lighting, the angles, and the colors. The actors, the lighting, the angles, and the colors. All of these things may be absent in literature, but there are deliberate choices on the part of the director, producer, or screenwriter, as are the words chosen by the author of a work of literature. The next is we would like to discuss about different types of film analysis. The first is semiotic analysis. Semiotic analysis is the analysis of meaning behind signs and symbols, typically involving metaphors, analogies, and symbolism. For instance, what characteristics can tell you about someone's personality? Something as simple as someone's appearance can reveal information about them. For example, in Frozen Disney movie. So Elsa's clothes represent fear of her magic and, by extension, herself. The next is narrative structure analysis. Narrative structure analysis is the analysis of the story elements, including plot structure, character motivation, and theme. Like the dramatic structure of literature, film has what is known as the three-act structure. Act 1, setup, Act 2, confrontation, and Act 3, resolution. Consider again the example of Frozen. You can use symbolism and narrative structure in conjunction by placing the symbolic object or even in the context of the narrative structure. For instance, the first appearance of the gloves is in Act 1, while their abandoning takes place in Act 2. Thus, the story progresses in such a way that demonstrates Elsa's personal growth. By the time of Act 3, the resolution, her aversion to touch, is gone, reflecting a theme of self-acceptance. The next is contextual analysis. Contextual analysis is analysis of the film as part of a broader context. Think about the culture, time, and place of the film's creation. For example, Frozen is often linked to the LGBTQ social movement. You might agree or disagree with this interpretation, and using evidence from the film support your argument. The last is Misesena analysis. Misesena analysis is analysis of the arrangement of compositional elements in film. Essentially, the analysis of audiovisual elements that most distinctly separate film analysis from literary analysis. Audiovisual elements that can be analyzed include props and costumes, setting, lighting, camera angles, frames, special effects, choreography, music, color values, depth, placement of characters, and etc.
Good evening, friends and Miss Oom. Thank you for your time. Now I'm going to tell you how to read a novel with a better understanding. To read a novel can quite seem challenging. Students are recommended to use the pencils to jot down some characters or themes in the note cards. You can draw a line, or maybe you can jot down some quotes and pitch the numbers of observations from your reading. Try yourself to read and reread and allow 5 minutes to read every page. This is the typical time. There are several types how to read a novel with a better understanding. The first, how we read for understanding. Don't take some notes as you read the novel. You need to get through the whole paragraph before you can pay attention to something very important. It will make your brain flow with many words, and it will build your picture in your mind, and you will have a better sense of it. As you really try to be aware of the patterns in the characters, mood, and the word choice. A closer examination. What we can do with a closer examination? When you start with taking some notes, there are many things that you can seek out from the text. Start with a view basic, and when you get experience with that, you can find out more items on the list. And there is one method that you can consider. As you jot in the margins, you can transfer the noteworthy items in note card. You can use one note card per character or theme, or the argument. Yeah, it can keep all your examples in one place. A novel is expected to be introduced until 600 new words. You might not be able to look up every dictionary in every word, but you need to use a laptop or dictionary handy. Try to look up at least 5 or 10 new words that you are unfamiliar. During a close reading, look for. When we do a close reading look, we can see from the descriptions what the person's objects or the events or even the facts, the imagery, what the kind of vivid or figurative language that used to describe the some things with more exaggeration, and then the interpretations by the author. Imaginary is something that drawn from the speculations on the part of viewer. So these are not the facts. The syntax, the patterns of the grammar, and the formation of the sentence or the phrases in the text itself. The semantic, the meaning of the words and distinctions in the meanings of the words or symbol. And also look for the foreshadowing, irony, and humor, and other literary devices used to move the story along. Next, I'm going to continue how to analyze a novel. When you analyze a novel, you look at the setting. Setting is the descriptions where and when the story takes place. What aspects that make what the things that make up the setting, like geography, weather, the time of day, and social conditions. What role does setting play in the story? Is it the important part of the plot or the theme? Study the time period, which is also part of the setting. When was the story written? Does it take place in the present, past, or future? How does the time period affect the language, atmosphere, or social circumstances of the novel? Characterizations. Characterizations deals with many characters are described, like to dialogues by the way they speak, by their physical appearance, interactions. Are they static characters? Do they develop by the end of the story? What type of characters are they? What qualities they have? Are they stereotyped? Are the characters believable? The plot and the structure. The plot is the main centers of the events that make up the story. What are the most important events? How is the plot structure? Is it linear, chronological, or does it move back and forth? Are there turning points, climax, or anticlimax? The narrator is the plot believable? Next, the narrator and point of view. The narrator is the person who tells the story. The point of view, whose eyes the story is being told. Who's the narrator of the speak on the story? Is the narrator the main character? Does the author speak through one of the characters? Is the story in the first person? Conflict. Conflict is tensions. Usually is the heart of the novel and is related to the main character. How you describe the main conflict? The theme. The theme is the main idea or lesson or message in the novel. It is usually an abstract, universal idea about the human condition, society, or life, the name of you. The style. The other styles has to do with the author's vocabulary, use of imagery, tone, or feeling of the story. It has to do with the attitude toward the subjects. In some novels, the tone can be ironic, humorous, cold, or dramatic. Does the author use a lot of symbolism, metaphors, or similes? What images are used? Your literary analysis of a novel will often be in the form of an essay or a book report, where you will be asked to give your opinions of the novel at the end. To conclude, choose the elements that made the greatest impression on you. Point out which characters you like best or least always, and always support your arguments. Try to view the novel as the whole and try to give a balanced analysis. Okay, that's all from me now. Thank you.